And finally, Shaun, you've already done 10 seasons of Mad as Hell. Why do another?
Well, that's a very good question, Patricia.
Thank you very much.
I guess when it comes to Canberra and federal politics, I can only say this.
I can't get enough of you, baby. I can't get enough of you, baby. I guess it's true. Baby, yes, it's true.
Whenever we kiss, I get a feeling like this. I get to wishing that there was two of you. My heart cries out, oh baby, it feels so nice. I want your arms to wrap around me twice.
I can't get enough of you, baby. I can't get enough of you, baby. Right or wrong. Baby, right or wrong.
When you had to go, I hated the thought. I only wish the night was twice as long.
My heart cries out, oh baby, I love you so much. I wish that there was more of you to crush.
I can't get enough of you, baby.
Can't get enough of you,
I
baby.
can't get enough of you, baby.
Thank you very much. Well, so what happened over the break? I haven't been following the news. Everybody all at once, if you could. Yeah, OK, well, clearly a lot's happened since we've been away. Now, I'm not saying things would have been better had we been on air, but at least you wouldn't have had to watch the garbage they put on instead of us. Worst Doctor Who ever. Anyway, when we left you towards the end of last year, the big issues were whether people could hide behind their religion to be mean to gay people, shutting down the unions and making sure refugees couldn't get emergency medical treatment. You know, the usual stuff. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was riding high on a rating of 43% as preferred PM. Sure, the daggy dad knockabout shark supporting everyman persona that won him the election was wearing a bit thin, but you still couldn't quite see his arse through the material, so you'd have thought it'll at least have lasted him through the holidays. He'd arranged a trip away with Jenny and the kids, much needed after 35 sitting days in Parliament last year. What could possibly go wrong? Not that. No, there were the... Wait, there were the bushfires, or as the PM described them in a newly minted cliche, the new normal. Yes, the new normal. And suddenly our Prime Minister was under siege. Sir David Attenborough got stuck into him. Greta Thunberg had a go at him. Even Bette Midler, who normally keeps her own counsel when it comes to Australian politics, called him a fuckwit. Now, I think Sir David and Greta and Bette are being very unfair criticising Scott over his climate change policy. It's a bit like criticising me about my pet unicorn. I don't have one, and even if I did, it doesn't exist anyway. Of course, some of you out there watching tonight, and a goodly proportion of those of you who aren't, would say that Australia has been putting up with these sorts of harsh conditions for years. And that's true. Bushfires are nothing new in this country, and historically we've shown ourselves to be very resilient people. Got a bit soft over the last 230 years, I grant you that. But generally we've been able to handle it. It's in our nature to cope with harsh conditions like drought. It's part of what makes us Australian. The thing is, when Dorothea Micallef said, "I love a sunburnt country," I do not think she meant it literally. We need a climate policy. So, Scott, if you're watching, Albo is now on 43% as preferred Prime Minister, and that's with a pretty half-assed climate policy. and a promise to keep exporting coal, so it won't take much to win us back. Now, a little later on, we'll be looking at what the PM is doing, including look at the Royal Commission, which, with the states, would, according to the Prime Minister,
would need to cover the full gambit of issues.
Now, he said gambit of issues. He probably meant gamut, because a gambit is an act or remark calculated to gain an advantage. And that doesn't sound like the Prime Minister at all. Also, online lies about coronavirus going viral makes for a confusing headline. And if Bettina Arndt identifies as a clinical psychologist, who are we to tell her that she isn't one? But first, else, I'd like to talk about former Deputy Leader of the Nationals, Bridget McKenzie. Now, as you can see from the photograph here, she's normally very careful about how she conducts herself in public. But as we also know, in the run-up to last year's election, she spent $100 million on community sport infrastructure grants that the Auditor General said showed evidence of bias in their distribution to marginal seats, or ones they were after. It's what the press are calling sports rorts, but what I'd like to call sports! Darius Horsham, your department was a big supporter of Bridget McKenzie in the lead-up to her resignation. In fact, your minister is on record as saying...
Bridget McKenzie is a great minister who does a great job, and absolutely she has the support.
Now, in what way was she a great minister who did a great job?
If you define great as okay, and minister as that lady we had to give the job to because Barnaby is an idiot and had to resign, which meant we had to promote that other idiot to replace him, which meant we had to fill his position with someone, and also we have to have a certain number of ministers who are from the Nationals, and finding any that are sentient beings is difficult, then yes, she was a great minister.
Okay. And so by great job, you mean OK job?
No, we mean great as in great, but only if you redefine job to mean pork barrel in the electorate.
On that, can I draw your attention to the monitor?
Yes.
This is the Sport Australia funding schedule. It had about $30 million put in it after Scott Morrison announced the election, and then 2 months later, and a month before the election, that figure was more than tripled to over $100 million.
What's your point?
Well, I'm suggesting that the Community Sport Infrastructure Grant Program was knowingly and cynically used as an illegal slush fund.
How dare you! It was knowingly and cynically used as a perfectly legal slush fund. Bridget was the sports patsy.
Minister.
It was within her rights to ignore 73% of Sport Australia's recommendations and give the money to marginal and targeted electorates.
What about topping up the slush fund twice before the election? Isn't that a monstrous breach of trust with the Australian people?
Well, Micallef from Labor did something similar that time.
Yes, and she admitted her wrongdoing when she resigned.
Well, times have changed. Expectations are much lower now.
Where did you even get $100 million?
It was easy. People couldn't navigate the NDIS. We didn't increase New Start.
Yeah, but hang on a minute.
Listen, Bridget's a pork barrel half-full type of person, you know? So she sees that and she tops it up with more pork till it's full. She stuffs it in. Get in there, she yells to the pork as she crams it in with some sort of paddle. In fact, there is so much pork, she has to go and get a bigger barrel, and like Brody says in Jaws about the boat. So she gets this colossal barrel filled to bursting with pork with a shower nozzle so she can rain down the money on the various electorates that we need to bribe so they can vote for us so we can stay in power. What is so morally objectionable about that?
Hold that thought. Of course, it's not only ministers who supported the former sports and now former agriculture minister, Senator without portfolio Erica Betts.
Ministers are not the ventriloquist doll of the department.
And if they were, you'd expect them to be a lot more convincing than that. Thank you very much, Darius.
Fantastic.
But Bridget had been getting a lot of support, not only from fellow ministers and backbenchers, but also barely in the chamber people like the Nationals' Barnaby Joyce and Michelle Landry. Barnaby helped by saying, she will keep her job. I have been taking bets with people. She will keep her job. She will see it through. Now, Barnaby is seldom wrong. Even when he made a prediction about his own career and said 6 days before he was forced to resign, I'm not going anywhere, he was kind of right. As for Michelle Landry, she has said that Bridget was Deputy Leader of the Nationals and she believes she would remain in that position. Now, in fairness, how things end up and in what position has never been Michelle's strong suit.
If we do not exploit our natural advantages, we will fail as a nation and be relegated to the annals of history as the nation that wasted a continent.
Now, regardless of who came out in support of Bridget, she's gone as a result of the report put together by Prime Minister and Cabinet Secretary Phil Gaetjens, whose investigations revealed she had breached ministerial standards. Feng Shui advisor to the Minister for Government Services, Micallef. Bridget's supporters have made the undisputed and irrelevant point that all the clubs receiving the grants were eligible. But surely the question is, to what extent was the Prime Minister's office involved in circumventing Sport Australia's independence?
Well, Shaun, all those sports clubs were eligible for funding.
Yes. Well, that's an answer to a different question, though, isn't it?
Which you failed to ask. I mean, I'm here to provide you with answers, Shaun. How about you do your job and find the questions that go with them?
What about the colour-coded spreadsheet from the former Minister's office outlining which marginal and targeted seats they were going to get the money?
Girls shouldn't have to change behind the building, Shaun. They should be able to change in it.
Again, I haven't asked you anything that would even remotely invite that answer.
Well, if you want to live in your own little fantasy world with your head in the sand and just obstinately keep asking the wrong questions, regardless of what answers I give, there's not much I can do about it, is there?
What about the $1 million fast track to shooting clubs and the $160,000 report about the economic and social benefits of firing guns?
Well, would you rather the girls change behind a tree? Or in a car?
Yes, well, that doesn't answer my question, does it?
Shaun, people are sick of political interviewers avoiding the right questions. They're sick of it.
What about the email that directly implicates the Prime Minister's office?
Jenny and I just want to congratulate the states on the great job they've been doing.
Is there any point to interviewing any of you?
We'll be looking at that at the appropriate time, and we'll continue to be looking at that at the appropriate time, and that's what we're doing.
Well, that could be the answer to any number of questions.
None of which you seem to want to ask.
Micallef, what's the point?
Wholemeal crumpets.
But right now, with an unnecessarily tortured analogy concerning why Australia shouldn't do anything substantial about carbon emissions because we only emit 1.3% of them, here's Tosh Greenslade in a wig and glasses.
That's exactly right, Shaun. Underpinning the federal government's infuriating inaction on climate change has been their persistent mantra that because we only emit such a small amount of CO2, it's not going to make any difference if we stop. A bit like not farting in an elevator full of fat people who have eaten double portions of 6-alarm curry made with corpse flowers. No one's going to notice you're being discreet, so why bother? Of course, people get off at different floors, and that doesn't happen with climate change. We're all trapped in the lift. The other difference is that farts are funny and can't kill you. The complete opposite of climate change. Perhaps a better analogy comes from history. Australia is Julius Caesar, and we are one of a number of people stabbing him to death. If we don't stab him, he'll die anyway from the other wounds. So we may as well plunge our knife into him along with everybody else rather than lead by example or try to stop them. Finally, Scott Morrison says emissions do not have accents, which is a pity, because if they did, we probably wouldn't let them into the country. Shaun.
Thank you very much. Tosh Greenslade. Tosh Greenslade there in a wig and glasses using heavy-handed satire to make a rather obvious point. Thank you. Thank you, Tosh. Coming up after the break. If shooting is a sport, then why not stabbing? We talk to our panel of people with no expertise at all.
It's a grey area, Shaun.
What about strangling? Is that a sport? Nah. Poisoning? I don't reckon. Throwing acid in someone's face?
Could be. Requires distance and accuracy.
All right, so it's about being able to concentrate your energy and focus on a particular target, ignoring everything else around you.
Yeah, same skills you need to fund projects in marginal seats.
Also, one of the more questionable sports grants was $190,000 to a golf club in the Adelaide Hills that wanted to upgrade its foyer to attract more wedding bookings. We ask our panel, is getting married a sport?
If there's a shotgun involved, yes.
We'll talk about that later, after the break.
No, I agree with you.
After the break.
No, I'm divorced. I'll marry you.
Cut to the...
Paul McCartney, Robert De Niro, Jermaine Greer, Stephen Hawking, Pele, Steve Jobs, Naomi Wolf, Bob Dylan, Nelson Mandela, Winston Churchill, Mahatma Gandhi, Che Guevara, and Adolf Hitler. Angus Taylor has met and outsmarted all of them. Angus, a life well remembered on ABC and iView.
Well, Chris Lorax is the subpar editor of the Daily Telegraph, and it's always fun to have a look at his most recent headlines and have him justify them. Chris, Megxit, as people have been irritatingly calling it, has been big news.
Yes, it's great to be able to splash pictures of Meghan and Harry throughout the newspaper and have it relate to things that are actually happening for once.
Here we go. Thrown right out.
Yeah, as in they've been thrown out.
Yes.
It's a play on words. Also, just next to it, great pun about ScoMo being hit with friendly fire. It's a play on words about the devastating bushfires. Just a bit of fun.
Now, you promise more on page 7. I assume you mean more puns?
Oh, yes.
And on page 7, you deliver with crown and out.
Yeah, as in down and out.
Are they, though? I mean, Harry and Meghan still get to stay in Frogmore Cottage when in England they're hardly destitute.
Yeah, down rhymes with crown.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but it doesn't mean anything. They don't have their HRH titles anymore. Crown and out suggests that they're out, but they still have their titles. The headline actually conveys the opposite of what you're intending.
We weren't sure which way the story was going to go when we came up with the headline. We'd already used up thrown out on the front page.
And finally, thank merciful heaven, this front page from earlier this year.
Yes, we're very proud of that one. Ayatollah, which is Muslim for something, and I told you so, which we imagine someone said.
No, I was actually thinking of this one to the side about the Libyan raid on some stables. Hostages snatched.
I think that's just a typo.
But right now, I'd like to get something off my chest. The last thing I want to do is to take sides on this show. I think a news program, even a fake one like ours, should sit in the middle and not have any attitude about anything. We should just roll the clips and show the newspaper graphics without comment. But I have to say, I do agree with the editorial in the former Fairfax Media recently, which said, if Scott Morrison wants climate credibility, he should be pushing electric vehicles. Because, you know, if he pushes them, then we won't need to generate any electricity to run them. But I think the press and even real people, particularly you typical ABC viewers, are being very unfair to our PM. And I'd like to defend him, if I may, with a little bit of plain speaking. Now, everyone seems to be looking around for someone we can blame for our lack of a national coordinated energy and climate policy. Anthony Albanese blames the government's sloth. I didn't even know we had one. Albo then went on to say,
there's been a decade wasted by the coalition.
Well, I take my hat off, along with my compression socks, to a coalition that can waste a decade in just 6 years of government. If we had that sort of efficiency and productivity in the business sector, our economy would be riding high. But it's not as if there isn't hope. As the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said,
we are going to continue to evolve our policy in this area to reduce emissions.
And by saying they will evolve climate change policy, presumably he's ruling out the possibility of intelligent design. Now, you might be thinking, do we have billions of years to wait for natural selection to play out in the Liberal Party room? Well, the thing is, as Scott said, there's no point shutting down our coal-fired power plants and coal mines because
other countries will just buy the coal from somewhere else.
Exactly. It's like ICE or child pornography. You close down one meth lab or one online site and people are just going to go somewhere else. So why bother doing the right thing at all? And the fact of the matter is that the PM has been helping people. He's even been willing to help people shake his hand when they can't bring themselves to do it. Because the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, knows exactly what people need at the moment.
What people need now is what people need now.
I mean, it's hard to argue with that, isn't it? Mainly because he'd talk over you if you tried. As Prime Minister, he's also been exercising all the skills that got him sacked from Tourism Australia so he could go on to become our Prime Minister in the first place. Scott contacted the US State Department to personally gaslight them so they would downgrade their travel warning to Australia from exercise increased caution to exercise normal precautions. You know, don't be freaked out when the toilet swirls the other way. Our football is weird. Remember to bring a snake venom kit. And all this was very helpful because until the PM's intervention, American tourists were being advised to postpone their trips. People from all around the world simply weren't coming here, not only because of the bushfires, but also because they'd probably seen this ad. But the PM is saying that we're open for business. Come on over, unless you're from China, obviously.
Australia is open. Australia is still a wonderful place to come and bring your family and enjoy your holidays.
And who better to send this message about not postponing your holidays because of the bushfires than someone who refused to postpone his own holidays because of the bushfires? And incidentally, a shout-out, if I may, to those of you out there who've made donations. I know it's not a competition or about how famous you are, but Chris Hemsworth, if you're watching, $1 million, fantastic. And Elton John might still be in the country. I don't know, I'm not a big fan. $1 million, well done. Thank you, Elton. Also, BHP, well done. $2 million. That's twice as much as Chris and Elton's individual donations, which is fair enough because when you think about it, Chris and Elton's combined contribution to global warming would be about the same as BHP's. Anyway, as I say, it's not about who gives the most, but the winner has got to be Chairman of Fortescue Metals, Twiggy Forrest, with $70 million. Now, Bluey Curlicue from Fortescue Metals, that's an astonishingly generous amount of money for bushfire relief.
Well, 10 million is going to bushfire relief. Most of it is actually going on how to cope with these sorts of bushfires in the future.
Still, 10 million. Very generous. Not quite as generous as 70, but, you know, still pretty impressive.
Twiggy will do whatever he can to help deal with the effects of these fires, many of which were deliberately lit.
Would he recommend Fortescue Metals consider a levy per tonne of its iron ore, which is sintered and smelted by coal in furnaces, which are also deliberately lit?
That'd be billions of dollars.
Yeah, sure, it'd be enormously helpful in terms of rebuilding and ensuring resilience.
Listen, why should industry spend billions of dollars from its profits when a $70 million tax-deductible donation to a charity run by the donor from his dividends, most of which will be spent researching how to cope with the climate crisis we're contributing to, will look much better?
But it's just dealing with the consequences, not the cause.
If arsonists didn't light fires in the first place, there wouldn't be any. It's as simple as that. It's like tobacco. Just because someone makes cigarettes and sells them to you and encourages you to smoke them and enjoy that cool, clean taste doesn't mean they're responsible when you get cancer. The responsibility lies with whoever lights a cigarette or passively inhales their fumes.
Yes, but
Twiggy is doing something good and decent. And for you to sit there and suggest he's trying to trade off how he makes his money with how he spends some of it, or that he's somehow trying to polish the turd that is the reputation of the mining industry, well, that's just cynicism on your part.
So this isn't even Twiggy trying to feel less guilty about climate change?
Absolutely not. Listen, if Australia is Europe during the Middle Ages and the mining industry is a rat, then Twiggy is the plague-infested flea on that rat, living off it as it goes about its business and inadvertently wiping out 3/5 of the population. If that flea then offers to help formulate a plan to cope with the next outbreak of bubonic plague, you'd be a fool not to accept it.
Well, thank you, Bluey, and for coming on tonight and helping us out. Please accept this P2-way Aussie face mask, courtesy of Mad as Hell. The P2-way is the only way to keep the smoke out and the coronavirus in. That's nice. And now it's over to Ugly Jim Spoons for jokes about how hot it's been.
Hot, Shaun, I'll tell you how hot it's been. It's been so hot in Sydney, I saw a junkie buying actual ice. I did. I tell you, Sydney's been so hot, the only affordable land is a mirage. No, but seriously, the heat in Sydney has been so bad, everyone's gone down to Oxford Street because they heard the drag queens were throwing shade. Oh, what about Melbourne, you ask? Well, it's been so hot down there, I saw a raw vegan go outside and come back cooked. I tell you, it's been so hot. It's been so hot, missus. It's been so hot in Melbourne, I went into a cafe and got a farté, which is a latte that evaporated. In fact, Melbourne has gotten so hot lately, so hot has it become that even Fitzroy stopped being cool. Oh. And don't get me started on Adelaide. I heard it's so hot in Adelaide, the Rundle Street balls are stuck to the Rundle Street leg. Brisbane's not much better. In fact, it's so hot up in Brisbane, they finally have a reason to be not doing anything. And what about that Perth? Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you over there. Well, Perth is so hot, the young people can't move to Melbourne because they're all stuck to the couch. Oh, it's warm. Back to you, Shaun.
Thank you, Ugly Jim Spoons. Well, still to come, the Greens. Are they wasteful, getting a new leader instead of reusing the old one? Also coming up in a moment, are campaigns like Beers for Bushfire Relief a good idea, or will they lead to other vices being used to encourage philanthropy? I speak to Ken Doherty from Problem Gamblers Against Pyromania. Good evening. Bethany Splatt from OxyContin Abusers for Backburning.
Pleasure.
And Dave Gerbil, from binge-watching the entire 6 seasons of Downton Abbey, including the specials in the movie, while masturbating, Save the Koala Fund. Anyway, as I say, that discussion later on, if at all.
Excuse me, Shaun?
Yes, question right at the back there, yes, sir.
Yeah, Shaun, not so much a question as it is an ill-considered interruption, Shaun.
Well, go on, yes.
Australians were offered, on account of the coronavirus, evacuation from China to Christmas Island if they paid $1,000.
What an offer not to be sneezed at.
Well, I should hope not, Shaun, or they might have to spend longer in quarantine.
No, I meant that it was a good deal.
Oh, exactly. And now they're getting it for free, so I don't know what people are complaining about. Christmas Island is a lovely place. Some people travel halfway around the world in leaky boats just to get there.
Yes, and your point being?
Well, I am confused about us having reversed the Medivac legislation. If the original reason for having it was so that asylum seekers could be brought from outside Australia to Christmas Island to get access to medical care they would not otherwise have received, is the reverse of that asylum seekers being sent from inside Australia to Christmas Island to get access to diseases they would not otherwise have contracted?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. If you think you know the answer, send your answers to us, and you could be in the running to win a tin of Heather U-Wart remover. A joke that doesn't really work when you say it out loud.
Alejandro and his brother Murray harvest the cocaine and prepare it for transport to markets around the world. This shipment is destined to reach Australia in time for the Logies, and it will be used by those who still watch it in order to stay awake.
How cocaine is helping families cope. Coming soon.
Well, vaccinations. Do they cause global warming? The Clockwork Movement Dance Ensemble filed this report.
Vaccination schism, that's what we have got. Vaccination schism, lost the plot. Or to cause autism, certainly not. Gotta wear a prism, now take a shot. It's a Jewish conspiracy.
Well, not coming up because black comedy is on in a minute.
Nationals leader uses the power of his mind to control his new deputy. And Nigella Lawson admits to craving recreational drugs.
I want pleasure, I want flavour, and I want ease.
And finally, while most politicians are often accused of talking out of their arses, Anthony Albanese has made it very clear he's not one of them.
I'm saying exactly what's coming out of my mouth.
At last, someone in Canberra telling it like it is. Goodbye.
Giant baby.
Welcome back. And here's Francis with Tangi McCarport from the Scott Morrison Government Marketing Department.
Thanks, Shaun. Now, the Scott Morrison government, the people who brought you stronger borders and lower taxes, are now introducing some brilliant new facilities like female change rooms and improved lighting for a range of growing sports, aren't they, Tangi?
That's right, Francis. Women's football, soccer, rowing...
Pork barrelling?
Pork barrelling, yes. We've provided a number of centres around the country with brand new state-of-the-art barrels and disease-free pork.
Now, Tangi, the participation rates in pork barrelling have been high under both Labor and Liberal national governments, haven't they?
Oh, as your viewers would know, Francis, and as Luzelle and Wimpany are demonstrating allegorically, pork barrelling's always been popular, though almost exclusively in marginal seats. That's why so much of the funding has gone there.
Makes sense to me. Tangi McCarport there from the Scott Morrison government for all your marginal seat sport infrastructure needs. Shaun.
Yes, what?
No, it's you now.
What's that?